Okay, so this one, let's talk about for loops or definite iteration. And there are definitely some differences here that you need to understand between Python and pseudocode. What does a for loop do? It repeats a certain number of times. So, for example, I can iterate through the first 10 numbers, or 0 to 9, and then print each number. So this is iterate through a sequence of numbers. What else can I do? I can iterate through a string, or I can iterate through a list. I can iterate through any iterable type. That's how Python works. For letter in, some string, print the letter. Iterate through a list, so I can say something like, for number in this list of numbers, print a number. So let's look at how these work in pseudocode. So the idea is that pseudocode only supports count control loops. So you can only use a loop where the iterator variable has a type of integer. Ooh, let's just add some more examples here to show you. So we need to think about, okay, how do we go downwards? We need to think about how do we do some sort of different sequence, like go up in 4s as well, don't we? Okay, so it's the syntax for I in range 0 to 9. This is the big difference because Python excludes the upper bound, whereas pseudocode includes the upper bound. And then I'll use output I, and let's do, not N4, but next I. This is the syntax. Commonly, you don't seem to have to declare the iterator variable. Let me just check that against the guide. Doesn't specify, doesn't show that you're declaring the iterator. For some reason, I'm not sure why that is. So you don't need to declare the for loop iterator variable. Let's see the second one. So this would be for I is 10 down to -1, -1. Let me just check if that's supported. Yeah, so 2 step. Maybe down to, maybe I'm referencing an old syllabus. Maybe it is just 2. So in this case, it would be inclusive, not exclusive. So we don't include the 0, so it would be down to 1, wouldn't it? So that's the difference between the pseudocode version and the Python version. Let's try this next one. So with a step, we can say like for I is 3 up to 49, because it doesn't include the upper bound, step in 4s. Okay, so that's how to iterate through sequences of numbers. Now let's talk about iterating through strings. So we can't just say for letter in. Python does not support this. Sorry, pseudocode does not support this. So we've got some string, and what we're going to need to do is iterate through the length of it. So we probably need to make a variable. Let's say declare my string is a string, and let's put it inside a variable. So my string is some string. What we need to do is count through the indices. So from position 1, remember from the last video that a string starts at 1, to the length of the string, which, because it's inclusive, it will include the last index. what we then need to do is we need to say output in order to get this variable letter, or maybe we could make a variable letter. So declare letter, which is a character. Let me just check that. Is it char or is it character? Char. Okay. What we need to do is use the mid function. So from the strings video, you should have seen this. Mid my string at position I, just take one letter out. So this would be the pseudo equivalent of iterating directly through a string in Python. Let's do the last one. So instead of a list, we would have an array. So because it's an array, we need to declare it. So let's say declare my array, which is an array from index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And it would be up to index 7 of integer. And then we can't just simply take everything in one go. So to populate an array with default values, you need to go through one by one to populate the array. So what is the influence here? We've got some like very low-level languages like I don't know, C, Fortran, Pascal, or older languages, not necessarily, definitely lower level than Python. And that's where these like syntax ideas are coming from. VisualBasic.net looks a bit like this. So let's put in our values 3, 67, and 2, and 34, and 7, and 2, and 2, and 23. So this is how you populate an array with initial values, and then let's talk about looping through it. So in this case, I is going to start at 0 because arrays are 0 indexed, strings are 1 indexed, confusingly. So let's count from I to, in this case we wouldn't use length because we never need to, length is a function that takes a string as a parameter. We should never need to use length because the length of an array is always predetermined. So we're going to loop up to the last index, which is 7, next I. And in this case, the subscription is just the same. So we're going to say print my array at I. So that's a little bit about for loops. So I suppose we should do a nested loop as well. So a nested loop in Python might be something like, for every one of my numbers, for every one of my letters, do something with my letter, let's replicate it number times. Run this code so we can see what happens. First of all, I've got the numbers up to 10, and then the numbers down from 10, the numbers up to 50 from 3 and 4s, the letters of the string, the numbers, and then let's look at what's happening here. So I'm saying for S, give me 3 S's, give me 67 S's, give me 2 S's, give me 34 S's, give me 7 S's. Oh, sorry, not quite round. For 3, give me 3 S's, 3 O's, 3 M's, 3 E's. Then let's give me 67 S's, 67 O's, 67, etc. So this is a nested loop where I'm doing this for every one of these. And then what I'm doing is I'm multiplying the letter by the number from the list. That's why we get this result. How would we convert this sort of like arbitrary code into Cambridge International pseudocode? Well, we've already talked about iterating through the numbers. So let's say for I in range, let's declare a variable called number. Let's make number equal to my array at I. Now let's do the letter in the string. So I've got some string declared up here, right? So this is how I iterate through the string. Oh, I didn't use my letter variable before. I think what I intended to do is make the letter variable and output the letter. So this is getting my letter, which is this bit. And then what we talked about in the previous video on strings is we can't just do string replication. So this would actually require another for loop, so a loop inside a loop inside a loop. And what we would do this time is have a separate variable and count from 1 up to number. So when it's 3, we're going 1, 2, 3. When it's 67, we're counting from 1 to 67. And what we want to do is output letter for every iteration. Look at me doing end for, that's the wrong syntax, don't do that. So this needs to be, oh, can you see the problem here? I shouldn't use the same iterator variable. Let's call this one x instead. Next x. This one would be next I. So this would be the kind of pseudocode equivalent of this sort of nested looping statement in Python. Okay, so what we've been through here is nested loops, iterating through lists or arrays, iterating through strings, and iterating through sequences of numbers.